In this video, we will cover the migration of Homo sapiens into the Indian subcontinent and their subsequent settlement. Anatomically modern humans arrived in India through multiple migration waves over tens of thousands of years. The earliest wave, known as the coastal migration or southern dispersal, occurred around 65,000 years ago, followed by further complex migrations within South and Southeast Asia. After the last glacial period and before the advent of farming, hunter-gatherer populations from West Asia and Iran moved into South Asia. These groups, along with the region's indigenous hunter-gatherers, formed the foundation of the population that would eventually become the Indus Valley Civilization. As the Indus Valley Civilization declined and Indo-European migrations took place, its people contributed to the emergence of two distinct ancestral groups: the ancestral North Indians, who were more closely related to present-day West Eurasians, and the ancestral South Indians, who descended primarily from southeastern Indian hunter-gatherers. These South Indian ancestors had distant connections to East Eurasians, including Aboriginal Australians, the Andamanese, and East Asians, as well as to West Eurasian hunter-gatherers from the Iranian Plateau. Between 1,900 and 4,200 years ago, after the fall of the Indus Valley Civilization, the ancestral North and South Indians mixed extensively during their southward migrations, influencing both modern Indo-European and Dravidian populations in the Indian subcontinent. Additionally, the migration of the Munda people and Sino-Tibetan-speaking groups from East Asia introduced further genetic and cultural influences to the region. First, modern human settlers of India. Pre- and post-Toba super-eruption. The timeline of the first successful migration of modern humans out of Africa remains a topic of debate, with some suggesting it may have occurred either before or after the Toba super-eruption, a catastrophic volcanic event that took place between 69,000 and 77,000 years ago at present-day Lake Toba in North Sumatra, Indonesia. Michael Petraglia argues that stone tools found beneath ash layers at Jwalapuram, Andhra Pradesh, point to human migration prior to the eruption. However, the identity of the people who created these tools remains uncertain, as no human remains were discovered. On the other hand, genetic evidence, such as the presence of haplogroup L3, a mitochondrial DNA lineage linked to early human migration out of Africa, suggests that migration might have occurred a few thousand years after the eruption. Haplogroup L3 is believed to have emerged between 60,000 and 70,000 years ago and played a crucial role in the early spread of anatomically modern humans. It has been proposed that the Toba eruption, around 74,000 years ago, devastated much of India's central forests, covering the region in a thick layer of volcanic ash. This event may have triggered a global climate shift, potentially plunging Earth into an ice age lasting up to 1,800 years. If true, this could explain the genetic bottleneck observed between 50,000 and 100,000 years ago, where human populations experienced a drastic reduction, leading to the low genetic diversity seen in humans today. Given the severity of the Toba eruption, especially its impact on the Indian subcontinent, it was once believed that the first human settlers in India could not have survived the disaster. This led to the theory that all early humans in the region perished during or shortly after the eruption, leaving no genetic trace in modern populations. Genetic studies have often supported this view, suggesting that the descendants of these early settlers did not contribute to the genetic makeup of present-day humans in India. Pre-Toba Tools, a study published in 2009 by a team led by Michael Petraglia from the University of Oxford, suggested that some early humans might have survived the Toba super-eruption on the Indian mainland. The team conducted Pompeii-like excavations beneath the ash layers from the eruption and discovered tools and evidence of human settlements from both before and after the event. However, no human fossils from this period were found, and the ethnic identity of these early humans remains unknown. Additional studies by Macaulay's team in 2005 and Post's team in 2016 also proposed that human migration to the region occurred after the Toba eruption. Early Stone Age hominin fossils, some dated between 200,000 and 700,000 years ago, have been found in the Narmada Valley of Madhya Pradesh, but it is still unclear which species these fossils belong to. Post-Toba southern coastal dispersal, around 70,000 to 50,000 years ago, a small group of humans, likely numbering between 150 and 1,000 individuals, crossed the Red Sea. This group followed the coastal route around Arabia and Persia, eventually reaching India, which seems to have been their first major settlement point. According to geneticist Spencer Wells, these early travelers continued along Asia's southern coastline, crossed about 250 kilometers, 155 miles, of sea, and eventually reached Australia by around 50,000 years ago. Wells asserts that the Aboriginal Australians are descendants of this initial migration wave. The oldest confirmed Homo sapiens fossils discovered in South Asia are those of Balangoda man, found in Sri Lanka. These fossils are at least 28,000 years old. While the concept of indigenous Aryanism is promoted by certain Hindutva groups in India, it lacks support in peer-reviewed academic literature. Ancient Ancestral South Indian in 2018, Dr. Vagish M. Narasimhan, a geneticist from Harvard Medical School, coined the term Ancient Ancestral South Indian to refer to the earliest human inhabitants of the Indian subcontinent. These populations are thought to be distantly related to the common ancestors of East Eurasians, such as the Andaman Islanders, East Asians, and Australian Aboriginals. Dr. Narasimhan explained that nearly all of the ancestral lineage of present-day Eastern and Southern Asians, before any West Eurasian genetic influence in Southern Asians, can be traced back to a single eastward migration. This migration rapidly gave rise to the distinct lineages that led to the ancient ancestral South Indians, East Asians, Onge, Andaman Islanders, and Australians, a group collectively referred to as East Eurasians. Relation to Andaman Islanders genetic studies have provided evidence of a distant shared ancestry between the native Andaman Islanders and the ancient ancestral South Indian component found in South Asians. However, modern South Asians do not carry the paternal lineages typical of the Andamanese, which suggests that either these paternal lineages may have become extinct in India or they are so rare that they have not yet been detected. In 2013, Gyaneshwar Chaubey from the Estonian Biocenter and Philip Endicott from the Musée de l'Homme in Paris published a study in human biology, noting that the Andamanese are genetically closer to Southeast Asian Negritos than to present-day South Asians. Dr. Vasant Shinde from the Department of Archaeology at Deccan College in Pune, India, further supported this view in 2019, suggesting that either Andamanese or East Siberian hunter-gatherers could be a proxy for the AASI due to their shared deep ancestral roots. However, Dr. Burak Yelman from the Institute of Genomics at the University of Tartu in Estonia argues that the genetic component of native South Asians is distinct from that of the Andamanese, making the Andamanese an imperfect proxy for ancient ancestral South Indian. He pointed out that the Andamanese genetic component, as seen in the Onge population, was not detected in northern Indian Gujaratis. Dr. Yelman proposed that the Paniya people of South India, who are believed to have largely AASI ancestry, would serve as a more accurate proxy for the native South Asian genetic component in modern South Asians. According to Dr. Narasimhan, the ancient ancestral South Indian genetic component shares a common origin with the Andamanese, represented by the Onge, and is distantly related to both the Onge and other East Eurasian populations, including East Asians and Aboriginal Australians. This places the ancient ancestral South Indian within the broader East Eurasian lineage. Relation to Negritos. The present-day Andamese are considered part of the Negritos, a term used to describe several distinct ethnic groups living in isolated regions of Southeast Asia. Initially, these groups were thought to form a single population due to their physical similarities. However, the use of the label Negrito to group together different ethnicities based only on shared characteristics like stature and complexion has been increasingly questioned. Recent studies indicate that the Negritos actually represent several separate groups and that they are not closely related to the Pygmies of Africa. Dr. Vishwanathan from the Department of Genetics at Bharathiar University in Coimbatore, India, suggests that the features commonly associated with Negritos may have developed through convergent evolution. On the other hand, some researchers argue that, with current genetic data, there is no evidence of a single ancestral population for the various groups traditionally identified as Negritos. The Andamese people have a unique ancestry and are not closely related to other South Asians. However, they share a closer genetic link to Southeast Asian Negritos, which suggests that South Asian populations do not directly descend from Negritos. Sri Lankan Veda. The ancestors of the modern Veda people are believed to be the earliest inhabitants of Sri Lanka, with their arrival tentatively dated to about 40,000 to 35,000 years ago. Genetically, the Vedas are distinct from other populations in Sri Lanka, exhibiting significant intra-group diversity, which suggests they have existed as small, isolated groups with considerable genetic drift over time. A 2013 study by Raghavan and his team found that the Vedas are closely related to other ethnic groups in Sri Lanka and India, particularly the Sinhalese and Tamils. The study also revealed deep genetic connections between the indigenous Veda population and other South Asian groups, as well as modern populations in Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. We will explore the Veda people of Sri Lanka in more detail in a separate video. Following the last glacial period, human populations began to grow and migrate. With the development of agriculture, often referred to as the Neolithic Revolution, larger populations could be sustained. The introduction of metals such as copper, bronze, and iron further transformed human societies, providing early technological advantages, promoting migrations, and facilitating genetic mixing. One study suggests that multiple waves of migration from Western Eurasia occurred after the last ice age, both before and after the emergence of farming in South Asia. According to Dr. Narasimhan, populations related to Iranian hunter-gatherers had already entered South Asia before the rise of farming. These groups mixed with ancestral ancient South Asians, forming the population that would later contribute to the Indus Valley Civilization. After the decline of the Indus Valley Civilization around 1900 BCE and the arrival of the Indo-Aryans, the people of the Indus Valley mixed with the incoming Indo-Aryans, contributing to the formation of the ancestral North Indians. Meanwhile, other groups from the Indus Valley Civilization mingled with ancestral ancient South Asians to form the ancestral South Indians. Between 4,200 and 1,900 years ago, roughly from 2200 BCE to 100 CE, these two ancestral groups extensively intermingled, after which a shift towards endogamy, or marriage within the same group, began, possibly influenced by social norms and values during the Hindu Gupta period. According to David Reich, a geneticist at Harvard Medical School, the ancestry of ancestral South Indians ranges from 39% to 71% in modern India, with higher percentages found among traditionally upper caste groups, martial races, and Indo-European speakers. Pre-Indo-Aryan West Eurasian ancestry. Both Dr. Narasimhan and Dr. Shinde have concluded that West Eurasian ancestry was present in South Asia before the advent of farming. Dr. Metspalu, an evolutionary biologist from the Estonian Biocenter, identified a genetic component in India known as K5, which is also found across the Indus Valley, Central Asia, and the Caucasus. This K5 component may represent the genetic legacy of the ancestral North Indians. The spread of this genetic marker within India is uneven, which challenges the model suggesting a direct north-to-south genetic contribution between the ancestral North Indians and ancestral South Indians. Regardless of the exact origin of this component, whether from the Caucasus, the Near East, the Indus Valley, or Central Asia, it must have spread long before the detection limits of modern genetic studies, which date back to at least 12,500 years ago. Dr. Metspalu explained that the West Eurasian genetic component in India likely stems from a population that diverged from those living in Eurasia, with this separation occurring at least 12,500 years ago. Possible migration of Iranian Neolithic farmers Irene Gallego-Romero, a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Chicago, suggests that the West Eurasian genetic contributions identified in earlier studies primarily reflect gene flow from Iran and the broader Middle East. Gallego-Romero points out that lactose tolerance, which is common in modern South Asians, shows a genetic pattern similar to a mutation found in Europe. This suggests that the mutation, which enables lactose tolerance, spread from the Middle East to Europe and, through a second migration, reached India, likely via the Persian Gulf coastal route where other populations exhibiting the mutation have been found. The evidence indicates that Neolithic farmers who migrated from the Fertile Crescent, specifically from the Zagros Mountains region of modern-day Iran, brought their agricultural practices to South Asia around 10,000 years ago. This migration played a major role in shaping the genetic landscape of modern South Asians. Mehrgar and early South Asian settlements Mehrgar, located to the west of the Indus River Valley, thrived between 7000 BCE and 2500 BCE and is considered a precursor to the Indus Valley Civilization. The people of Mehrgar migrated into the Indus Valley, where they became part of the Indus Valley Civilization. This site provides some of the earliest evidence of farming and herding in South Asia. There is strong continuity between the Neolithic and Chalcolithic periods in Mehrgar, but dental evidence suggests that the Chalcolithic population did not directly descend from the Neolithic people of Mehrgar. Instead, moderate levels of gene flow likely occurred. The direct descendants of the Neolithic inhabitants of Mehrgar are believed to be found to the south and east of the site, in northwestern India and along the western edge of the Deccan Plateau. Interestingly, Neolithic Mehrgar shows greater genetic affinity with Chalcolithic Inam Gaon, located south of Mehrgar, than with the later Chalcolithic populations of Mehrgar itself.